I wish I would have understood more of the importance of grace, but also what it means to be human.
I think for the longest time, we as the church just haven't talked about things like this.
You can't be tempted by things that you aren't already interested in.
What's up, y'all? I'm Shane. Welcome to the Rethinking Youth Ministry Podcast. Today, we've got a really fun conversation because it is our summer 2024 XP3 release episode. Yes, we're going to have a conversation about some of the things that we're rethinking or we're hearing youth ministry leaders rethinking on specific topics. In fact, the topics that we're going to cover in our series in the summer season of XP3. But before we do that, I'd love for you to meet who else is sitting here for this conversation. So let's start to my right. The one and only.
The one and only. Hey, y'all, I'm Leslie. I'm just super grateful that I get to work with these incredible thought leaders, these incredible ministry leaders, and the kind of conversations that we get to have every day are just so important. So thanks for tuning in. And yeah, I'll pass it on to my right.
I'm Jeremey, and I get the privilege of being one of the student Orange specialists here at Orange and connecting with partners and churches all over the U.S.
And my name is Candice, Wynn, and I do the same thing that Jeremey does. I just do what he tells me to do.
She does it better.
But we're Orange student specialists, and what that means is anytime someone purchases the curriculum, they're automatically assigned an Orange specialist, just like a ministry coach and consultant that walks alongside them as they implement curriculum or just strategize in ministry.
Yeah.
You mean like
so
for
much better.
free?
For free.
Like literally,
Free
you buy the curriculum and you get a person. This is incredible.
I mean, you buy the curriculum.
You buy the curriculum and you get a person for free.
100%.
That's awesome.
It is. It's amazing what y'all
Ask
do.
for Candice.
Stop.
She's in charge, right?
That's right.
Jeremey, I just want to note that Leslie said thought leaders and pointed to you and ministry leaders and pointed to me.
Yeah, he's really
I'm not sure what
smart.
that means, so we'll see. We'll see how this kind of goes in the conversation. Well, look, we're releasing. It's not just four, though. It's 8 new series because we actually have 2 curriculums, XP3 Middle School and XP3 High School. And they're on some really, really, I think, helpful and important topics.
Yeah.
Topics that we're hearing about all over the youth ministry world, like service. Yeah, we've got like some really great series on some really important topics that are happening all over the youth ministry world. I know we're having conversations about them here at Orange, but I know that we're talking to youth ministry leaders that are rethinking these topics and how they engage with students around these topics all over the place. So I want to have a conversation about them. The first topic I want to cover is this topic of serving. And we have 2 series, actually. There's a middle school series and there's a high school series. The middle school series is called Remix. The high school series is called GOAT, and it's all about helping students re-engage or engage in serving. And I want to hear what you think. But before we do that, I'm sorry, we got to put a limit on it, all right? Like we don't have forever.
There's always limits.
I know. Okay, so we have an incredible producer. Her name is Corinne, and she is going to just keep us moving, all right? She's going to set a 5-minute timer for each of these topics, and when it goes off, you got to stop.
Oh, my
If not,
gosh.
I will stop you. No, I won't. We'll just keep talking about it. But it'll keep us focused. Okay, y'all ready for this?
Yes.
Yes.
Ready.
Let's do it. Corinne, you ready? Okay, here we go.
Well, personally, I mean, when as a youth pastor, I've been at Orange now for I guess since 2019, and prior to that, I did all kind of mission trips, outreach projects with teenagers, and I think it's important for teenagers to be able to participate in those kind of things, but I think that you've got to navigate that space in a way where you're not providing toxic charity, right? Because there's actually a book called Toxic Charity that we've read with our staff, but I think that if you are going somewhere and just putting a Band-Aid on something, then what does that teach a teenager about what the need is in the world, and how can we make sure that as we are providing service and we're doing all the things on mission trips or just within our local communities, that we're doing something that has a potential to make a lifelong and a lasting impact that actually meets a felt need. And that's one of the things that just really, really just sits with me, because I've seen lots of people just throw paint on walls, and I've done it. Paint on walls isn't terrible, but it's an aesthetic thing when kids run around with no shoes on, right? There's real needs that are out there. So when it comes to service and the need for service, it's
Yeah.
Yeah.
Candice, I'm gonna I'm gonna ask you to maybe define something you said. I think the term you used was toxic charity.
Yeah.
Could you talk about that a little bit?
Kind of sort of what I just said. So if you think about someone, so I'll give you an example. I live in, we're in the city of Atlanta, right? I've got 2 kids, elementary age kids, and we're riding down the street. And there's a serious homeless population in Atlanta.
Yeah.
And my daughter always wants to just give a homeless person whatever she might have left in her lunchbox. Or you don't have nothing in your car. They said anything will help. Give them that penny that you have, right? And, it's good that she has that heart of compassion. But if we are just constantly as churches going out and providing toiletry bags to homeless people, it might be helpful, but how are you teaching them to fish and be able to get off the street, right? And some of it might be a mental health challenge that many youth ministries can't do anything about mental health challenges, within the homeless population, within the world, or any kind of substance abuse or whatever the issues might be that kind of led them there. But if there's a way to address the actual need that caused the problem, right?
Yeah, that's good.
And sometimes we just address the problem and not necessarily the root need that exists that causes it. Otherwise, what happens is you're going to keep falling into these same cycles over and over again.
I think the other thing is that right now our students are living with eyes wide open and wanting to serve their communities, wanting to see different ways beyond just the typical youth ministry events that we put together. They're asking questions. As a church and as leaders, we have an opportunity to invest in opportunities to help our students see where they can serve, what they can do, who they can connect with that's not the typical person that they do through just our church events.
Yeah. I know we've written activities in the past in some of our curriculum about, we had one where we specifically were asking teenagers to spend time cross-generationally. And so we asked them to go spend some time just having conversations at a senior living community. And what we realized as we wrote that activity is that we actually had to provide a 1-pager before even getting to the activity of here's some things to say, here's some things not to say, here's some things to consider, here's some ways to prep. And so I think in the context of this conversation, when it comes to service, I think the way you are leading into the service project matters so much. Like the conversations, more than even meet at this time, we're going to, take a van or a bus and go do this thing. It's more so let's talk about why we're going. Let's talk about the people we're going to meet there. Let's talk about the impact we hope to have. Let's talk about what are we going to talk about while we're there. Let's talk about other people we're going to run into. Like that prep is really what makes it fruitful more than just going and doing the thing, I would say.
I totally agree with that. And things not to say. Because there's some things that might just be offensive for some cultures, and then even, to add on to that too, Leslie, is, leading into it, there's some prep that needs to happen. And then there's the experience that happens. And then there's the need, how do you debrief?
The follow-up.
How do you debrief afterwards? How do you help teenagers to continue to process the experience and not just let it be one moment that happened at one time and one experience? Because it's a lot of these outreach or mission trips or service projects, they have the potential to be tremendously impactful and transformative, and we have a responsibility
That's good.
with that.
That's good.
I would add to that, what do you let this experience do with you after you go on this trip? Don't just sit there and go, oh yeah, that was a good trip, and then keep going on in life.
I think all of that is so good and so helpful. And we've got like 1 minute left on that timer that I mentioned to you. So I just want to get any of y'all's final thoughts when it comes to this topic of service.
I have a final thought. What if we served in places where we weren't the only ones showing up to be a hero, but they can actually do something back for us in return, something that we would have to be humble enough to receive. So that's my final thought.
So you know what, that just took me somewhere. We don't have time for this, y'all. But so there's a quote on the Starbucks that I used to study at when I was in grad school, and it said, "Am I here to help you, or are you here to help me? No matter what, we both come up full." And a lot of times we go into these places and we think that we are the one to give, and we're here to serve you, and we're here to bless you, not even realizing that there's an opportunity for you to bless me too.
That's so good. Jeremy?
I would say also just thinking about the students who are kind of on the margins that may not have the opportunity to, for instance, our neurodiverse students. How are we not only serving them, but they also have a passion to serve others as well. And why are we not investing in them to give them the chance to do that?
Oh, that's so good.
Can we just talk about that?
Yeah, right. I know the timer went off, but I just have one more thought. Sorry, Corinne. When I think about this topic, I think about the fact that Jesus said the greatest among us will serve. Even he came to serve, not to be served. what better way to be like Jesus and help students become more like Jesus than activating them in service. So
is that why it's called GOAT?
Maybe.
I see what y'all
It's
do.
not. We're going to end the LeBron MJ debate.
no.
The answer? Jesus. Right? So come on, get out of here with that. Goodness sake. Oh, I know some of y'all would like that. Some of y'all, we're not going to do it. I'm sorry. Okay. Okay, so that is the topic of service. Let's move on to the next one. There are 2 series again, but they both have the same title in middle school and high school. They're both called Every Day. And we know this. Come on, every day is a really, really big idea around here at Orange. In fact, we talk about everyday faith. Yeah. That's what these series are all about, helping activate students in living out their faith day in and day out. So when you all hear that, what are you rethinking right now?
I think my first thought is this is going to sound counterintuitive, but I promise it balances out. But I think it's to take the pressure off of hitting every day and more so focusing on how do I make this spiritual discipline or spiritual practice so integrated and appealing and useful in life that you accidentally find yourself doing it every day versus being like, I need to do a habit tracker. I got to open my Bible app every day and make it more like, I just love spending time with Jesus, and I happen to be like wanting to read my Bible more. So how do you integrate it to be a natural part of your desire more than just a checklist of things?
That's so good. I want to add something to that. Yeah. When I think about this, I'm like, what if we move from doing something every day to becoming something every day?
That's good.
And like if we could help students understand that that's what everyday faith is, like it's not just check the box, do the thing, but it's like, no, you're actually becoming more like Jesus as you do these things. And that's really what we're focused on. Yeah. But I just think, Leslie, as you were talking, that's what popped into my head.
I think because but I think the reason why people approach it from the angle of doing is because a lot of times within churches, we focus on the action and Jesus' response to things. And we try to tell people to live like Jesus and like Jesus turned the other cheek. Jesus loved his enemies. Jesus did this. Jesus that did that. And not necessarily always really leaning into the spiritual disciplines that created him to be that kind of person who did those things naturally. Yep. Jesus didn't try to turn the other cheek. Jesus didn't try to love his enemies, his neighbors, right? Jesus just did that because his spiritual disciplines created those things within him, right? Yeah. So the starting place is not with trying. The starting place is with developing those disciplines so that the natural product becomes you doing those things.
Yeah.
Reverend Candice Wynn, ladies and gentlemen.
Right.
That's so good.
That's a serious passion of mine. It really, really is.
No, I love it. Yeah. Jeremy, what are you thinking?
I'm a little stuck on Candice right now. Sorry.
That was good. That was really good.
I think it's also there's this idea that students are hungry to want to have a not just a deeper relationship with God, but really want to know God more. But we've not done the best job as the church, and I'm saying this as a pastor and as a parent myself. Yeah. We've not done the best job as a church in giving students the tools to experience an everyday faith. We've kind of just given them small little snippets and said, here, this is a quick fix for you. But there's also a challenge on the other side for not just the students investing in an everyday faith, but them seeing it modeled from me as a parent and as a pastor. And so I'm excited because this series, I think, has the opportunity for us as leaders to really go, hey, this is something that I have to invest in myself as well.
Yeah. We've got to model it first. I love that. All right. Now, I want to get like really, really practical with this because there is something practical about what we're talking about. It is becoming, but it's by doing certain things. What are some of those things? What does it look like to help a student?
Yeah, I mean, here at Orange, we talk about 4 faith skills or habits or practices, which are hear, pray, talk, live. Hear from God through reading scripture, pray and talk to God, live for God through acts of worship and service, and hear, pray, talk. Which one did I fit?
You said live. Talk to others about God.
Talk to others about God. So,
Yeah,
those are 4.
Yeah. That's it.
Sorry, I was just trying to give us a starting point, but I guess that is all of them.
No, that is
a period.
Yeah, for real. No, that's really good. And I think, I don't know about you all, but I grew up hearing about spiritual disciplines and the importance of them. But learning how they actually help me cultivate my faith and like become a more fully formed follower of Jesus, but also like human being and who God created me to be is kind of a new thing. Like that's over the last few years for me. I've been wrestling with that. So the hope is, I think, with students, you know, not after just this series, but as you go through this series and then continue these conversations after, that they would begin to see the benefit now to build these habits as teenagers. So then by the time they're adults, like they're so far ahead of us in this journey, and that's a good thing. Like I think we can set them up to win there.
Cool.
I feel like are we wrapping up? Is our time up?
No.
Okay.
I don't know. I'm getting nervous.
20 seconds.
I have this like twitch.
Okay.
Right there.
I just want to say, it wasn't until I replaced the word in my own vocabulary, my own understanding of discipleship, replaced that with apprenticeship, and started to think of my life as an apprentice of Jesus, that things really opened up and changed for me. Be like, oh, I get it. Be that close to Jesus that I'm learning from his habits and his ways, and that's going to form me into a disciple or a follower of Jesus. So that was like huge for me.
That's so good.
That is good.
Jeremy, I think you and I should probably leave and just let Leslie.
We got this. Get out of here, guys.
We don't have time for you to dive into that a little bit. Do we? I think it might be helpful.
Oh, Corinne is shaking her head. No, I'm kidding. She's not. She's not. Go for it. Go for it. Go for it.
Just
Sorry,
talk
Corinne.
a little bit about how you understand the difference between disciple and apprentice.
I really think that words, when you hear them over time, they just kind of lose meaning. And I think our culture also we don't use the term apprenticeship that much. It's not like, oh, my dad's a blacksmith, and so I'm going to be a blacksmith too and learn, I'm going to apprentice under him. Like, you don't think about it. What?
I was just thinking, like, what is this, like
That's
medieval England?
Literally, when I think apprentice, I think of a blacksmith. I literally think of someone sitting there.
I was a blacksmith. Like, what? I'm sorry to our English listeners.
And that's literally proving my point. We don't have that. Like, when you literally talk about apprenticeship, I think really it goes so far back to a way culture used to function, is that you learned a trade from someone who was great at it by spending your life and your time with them. And so it's like, oh, if I'm going to learn to be a person of love, joy, peace, faith, you know, all of the spirit of Jesus is going to live inside of me. It's going to be because I spent that much time learning from Jesus how he did it.
That's dope.
That's so good. That's so good. I'm gonna transition this into our next topic, but John Mark Comer, he's a leader, pastor, thinker here in the U.S. He released a new book in January, and there's a sentence in there that I think speaks to everything we're talking about. He writes, "Disciple is a noun, not a verb." I think the verbs are the things that we do as we're becoming a disciple, but disciple being a noun this is something that you are. This is the person that you are becoming. It is not just a thing that you do at church. Like everyday faith is not just this practice thing because X plus Y equals Z and that's what you're aiming for. It's like, no. You are a disciple. Because you're a disciple, you do these things. Because you're an apprentice, you've seen Jesus do them and you follow his way. So I'm excited for that series and that conversation. All right, let's talk about our next one. I think Corinne is saying that she's cutting time. No, I'm just kidding. She's not. Corinne is not a tyrant. Let's just be really clear on that. She cannot defend herself. At least not right now on camera. She could once we're done recording this for sure.
And
for sure, I'm going to hear it. I'm going to hear it. Okay, we're going to start our next 5-minute timer, and we are going to talk about, I think it's probably like the lightest, easiest one for us to talk about.
Where are we going?
It's temptation.
Actually,
is the topic. The topic is resisting temptation. It's interesting. In middle school, the series on this topic is called Playbook for Temptation. In high school, it's called The Temptations, which I'm excited about. Like, I think of music when I think about that, but we're actually talking about it through the angle of different temptations we face. So here's where I want to start our 5 minutes, okay? I'm sorry, just roll with me for this one. When you think about yourself in high school and you think about the topic of temptation, what do you wish somebody would have said? And what do you hope someone never said to you about it?
I'm going to need a minute.
Yes,
pause the timer, Chris. Wait, what?
I don't remember whether someone said it or I read it somewhere, or it could have been something I heard at church. I don't know. But someone said, you can't be tempted by things that you aren't already interested in. Because if it's not already some sort of a desire within you, then there's no temptation for it. Right? That's something that has sat with me over the years. I remember vividly hearing it, right? Because I'm like, I don't know if I maybe I agree with that. And what it did to me was it forced me to pray that whole prayer, creating me a clean heart, oh God, and renew a right spirit, right? So just to kind of detox myself from the inside out. Which is I feel like it's good. But at the same time, I felt like, do we have control over the things that we might be interested in? And maybe you do have control over the things if you are discipled and seeking. I'm moving slow here on purpose because it's delicate.
It's important.
But it's just a thought that I know that's a heavy one, but it's just a thought that comes to my mind when I hear temptation and I think about my high school years.
Well, and I think that speaks to the importance of the way we talk about this.
Yes.
Because the way that was talked about to you as a teenager has stuck with you through time. So
and I'm knocking on 40's door.
Well,
okay?
There you go. Yeah, not that much time. Like, let's be really clear. Just a little bit of time. But I do think it's important for us as youth ministry leaders to think about how we talk about this topic. Makes a really significant impact. Jeremey, I'm curious your response to that question.
Well, I remember the same question being posed to me that Candice mentioned, but I would probably say, and I don't know, that one definitely hangs with me as well. I don't know.
No, that's okay. You had the same youth pastor? That's what I'm hearing.
Candice was my
actually grew up in the same church.
Youth pastor.
Get out of here.
Kidding,
No, that's
not
good.
that
That's a
old.
deep one. I think we're all
It
chewing on that.
is.
Now you said it, we're like, what? Leslie, anything you would add to that?
I mean, I'm probably going to dodge your question a little bit too, but
Corinne is saying no. She's saying you can't actually.
No, I guess it's going to take me a while to process like what I wish
you.
someone said and what I wish someone didn't say. I will say the thing I wish I heard sooner was that temptation is not a sin. Like to be tempted by something is not the sin. I think sometimes
I think you
you
just
can
answered
almost
my question.
well, just that you can like paint the picture for a kid that like, oh, if this even crosses your mind, or if you don't have self-control, like it becomes this huge, just a bigger challenge than it already is by let's just name it. Just to be tempted is not sin. You're just human, right? And so I think that's a piece of it. I wish I would have heard that sooner.
Because Jesus was tempted and he never sinned. So therefore, hey.
Right.
For sure. That's it for me, actually. That's kind of my response to that is, I don't know that anybody explicitly said it, but there were so many implied thoughts or teachings around temptation that made me feel as though just having the temptation is the sin, or having the temptation makes me a bad person, or whatever else. And that's just a bummer. Like, I don't know how else to say it. Like, I look back on my teenage self and I'm like, man, I wish I would have understood more of the importance of grace, but also more of what it means to be human and how these things are just normal parts of our humanity. So now as we're talking about temptation, part of the angle of our series is to actually give students tools for resisting temptation. I'm curious if there are any tools that pop into your minds, like maybe you've shared them with students as youth pastors, maybe somebody shared them with you and they've been really, really impactful.
I wouldn't call it a tool, but having a community around you and your small group leaders,
so important.
To be able to talk through the processes that you're going through, the things that you're thinking, the things that you're carrying with you, that was probably the most invaluable thing for me as a teenager, is just having my community there with me. So
yeah, that's really good.
I think that might really be a huge part of it.
Yeah.
Because I don't think that temptations ever stop. The things that you're tempted by, I think they evolve over the years, and they just change and they morph as you get older. But I think that one of the best things and there's something we say around Orange, one of the best things that we can give teenagers is a caring adult. And the community that we have the potential to put around people has the potential to make tremendous impacts. In that area of temptation.
Yeah.
And then also one piece too. Oh, that was loud and obnoxious.
That
timer.
I'm tempted to throw that phone right now. That's what I'm tempted. I'm just playing. I'm joking. For real. No,
I didn't remember what I was saying.
Oh, that's the point.
Good Lord.
That's the point. She wants to just wipe it clear.
Accomplished.
It's like, remember Men in Black? You remember that little thing they put in front of you and just Will Smith just put it up there and your memory's gone? That's Corinne's phone alarm.
I do remember though. Okay, wait. So I think sometimes when we think about temptations, or even teenagers think about temptation, it always goes in like the sexual lane.
Yeah.
Right? It's always around some sort of sexual
Yes.
piece, but realizing, hey, temptation looks many different ways, and it's not always sexual, and just bringing awareness to being able to recognize that, to see the temptations in their lives.
That's so important.
Yeah, it feels like part of the toolbox is to be able to give a kid or a teenager the questions you ask yourself about things, even so that they can name, is this a temptation or not? Because right now, like you said, you can name sexual temptation, we can name that. But sometimes it's like, I can't tell if I'm tempted by likes on Instagram unless I kind of have this checkpoint of, oh, this is why I'm behaving this way online, because I'm tempted by the idea of fame or, all
or
that.
Gossip.
So,
like,
yeah, exactly.
I think about like, oh, how do you feel when you gossip?
Exactly.
Like, I kind of enjoy
being able
that.
to check in and say, like, am I giving into a temptation? It's easy to name when it's a sexual temptation, but can we give them tools to even anticipate and process through other kinds of temptation?
Right.
Yeah. I know we got to move on.
I know.
Corinne is threatening me now off screen. I'm kidding. She's like the nicest human
nice
being anybody would ever. Y'all are going to meet Corinne someday and be like, oh my gosh, you are not at all what Shane described. You're so nice. I can't help but wonder if we start to talk about temptation, maybe in a more holistic or I even would say healthy way, like we're aiming to do in these series, what types of adults we'll have in churches 10 to 20 years down the road and how much healthier they'll be, maybe even than some of us who are adults in churches right now. Like, there's just a lot of potential, I think, to create some real lasting health by handling this conversation sensitively and intentionally. So I'm excited for those series. Okay, last one. I lied. I said that was the easiest topic. This is now actually the easiest topic. This will be really simple, okay? Actually, I'm really excited. We have a brand new installment of our Let's Talk About series of standalone talks in middle school and our Elevate series of standalone talks in high school. And the topic this time around is peace.
Oh.
And violence. So I know, right? We're elevating peace. We're talking about how to be peacemakers, but the reason we're talking about it is because violence is so pertinent in our culture today. Candice, I actually want to go to you here first. Oh, here's why, though. I know that you are a mom and you've got kids who play video games, play sports, do all of this. Like, violence is just a part of culture right now. Like, what has that experience been like for you?
We don't have time. And I think when you live in certain communities, like one of the things that I love about where I live is that it's economically and culturally diverse. One of the things that I hate about where I live is that it's economically and culturally diverse. You can't shield your children from being exposed to certain things, and it's kind of forced my hand to have certain conversations with my kids a lot more prematurely. Than what I've been ready for. And especially when you get into some youth sports, the things that some of my kids have just seen. Yeah, my son is about to be 10 and my daughter is 7. And some of the conversations that I've had to have, I mean, they really just forced my hand as a parent. But I think for me, it's the challenge for me as a parent is helping them to understand how people can make certain decisions. Because they're like, how can somebody do something like that? And they don't understand the complexity of life and the nuance of things and the ethics of something. Because sometimes when we see violence, there's a deeper part to it, right?
Yeah. Wow.
I used to work as a manager. I used to manage a program at a juvenile. It was what is it called? It was the first-time offenders, right? And I had a lot of first-time offenders coming through a program that I ran, and there was one girl who ended up getting arrested because she was stealing shoes, right? So think about violence of stealing, right?
Wow.
So why was she stealing shoes? Because her sister had not been to school in a week because she had no shoes. So there's another ethical piece of it that's like helping them to understand, like, not everybody who does something violent is wrong.
Wow.
There's a whole nother part. I know y'all probably weren't trying to bring in that part.
No,
but that's the challenge of it for me.
Yeah. I think that really expands our idea of it. And I think my question for all of you would be like, with that in mind, and sometimes what is cyclical and is just baked into the ethics and different communities and everything else, how do we think violence has gotten to the place that it has in our culture today? Because it's so pertinent. It's in everything. Like, how did we wind up here?
Will you speak more about when you say like baked into our culture? Will you give some handlebars to that?
Oh, I don't want to. I want you to say it, not me. No, but yeah, for sure. I mean, come on, video games. Like I've got. Here's what I don't want to sound like. I don't want to sound like the crotchety, like, wow, these kids and their video games. But let's just talk about it.
Yeah.
Like, like violence in video games, on the news, what's covered most often. Like, think about the fight accounts online that just have hundreds of thousands of followers of just people scrapping. And it's like, wait, what? You don't even know those people.
Yeah.
Movies. I love me a good movie, a good superhero movie, all of that. But like, I wouldn't want my kids, hitting people like that or being hit by people. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's just everywhere. Yeah. It's everywhere. Like, how do we wind up here?
But is that new though?
That's a great question.
I mean, and I'm not here to say that it is or isn't. This is when I really hope someone was here a little bit older than us, right? This intergenerational dialogue is a little bit better. I do think some crime rates have increased, right? But I also, at the same time, I just wonder, like, I grew up in D.C. when it was the murder capital. It's no longer the murder capital anymore, just another place is. So is it just shifted? And I know that with social media, we have the ability to hear about things a lot more because of just, you can put something out there like that, right? But I wonder if we were to, if because in our olden years, right, we're now being aware of different things, and in our matured mindsets, we're like, this isn't right. What's wrong with this? What's wrong with that? But when we were younger, it was there, and we were just like, oh, whatever.
My mind's going to the fact that I think for the longest time, we as the church just haven't talked about things like this. We've avoided hard conversations. We've tried to stick simply to what we know or what we read just in the Bible, but we've also kind of just colored over certain things. And especially when it comes to topics of violence, that seems to be a conversation culturally that within the church we kind of just brush over and pass by. And so the fact that this is an opportunity to have a hard or challenging conversation, I think could be really helpful to our students.
It makes me think, like, how are we defining violence? Because I think that's an important part for helping a generation be able to see it when it's just a seed of violence. Because it's easy to name the fruit of violence. It's easy to name, murder or just all the different things. I don't want to go there because it's sensitive. But when we can help a generation name, like, the root cause of it, and they can start to recognize it in themselves. It's in how you answer your friend. It's in how it's in these tiny things, and it grows over time. And I'm not saying that's every case, but I think the hope I have is that as we have these conversations with kids and teenagers, with middle schoolers and high schoolers, if we can help them define violence early enough to where, it's in how you bumped him on accident, quote unquote, with your book bag. That was the seed of it. And maybe over time that grows into a bigger, like, you become a bully, and you kind of go over and over and over, like, you grow and grow and grow into it. So to me, the hope I have is that we are helping a generation define it and call it out and name it in themselves and others when it's a small thing, when it's an easier thing to address than, like huge crime rates or things that can feel a little bit more insurmountable. But
well, and Leslie, I think when this generation can define it, they can better define how to become peacemakers, which is really what both Let's Talk About and Elevate are focused on this season. We're talking about becoming a peacemaker. I think one of the things that I love most about the opportunity in that space is that this generation really, I think, wants peace. Like, they're trying to figure out how to go about gaining it and moving toward it, but they really, really care about that. So that's the last thing. I know our timer's out, but I think this one's a really important one. We're going to keep talking on it for a second, but I'd love to know what you think about that idea of helping students become peacemakers.
I think it takes a certain humility to even realize you can play a part in peacemaking. It takes a certain, like, I'm going to stand down and I'm going to assess the situation and I'm going to be receptive to all the dynamics at play so that I know how to approach this without adding more chaos or anger or fear or whatever. So I think there's a humility to first be like, okay, I can be a peacemaker, so.
That's good.
I think it's also being very careful with how you culturally define making peace, because it can look very different for different cultures.
You got to say more.
I felt it when you said it.
I don't know how deep we can go in this, but I'll just throw it out there.
Yeah.
For a person of color, how we define peace will be very different for someone who is white. And we've got to be okay with that. we've got to be willing to wrestle in the messiness of that, but we've also got to be okay with the fact that you haven't walked in someone else's shoes before, and you haven't experienced the pain and suffering that they've gone through. You may have certain privileges that others don't, but you've got to understand that peace is very different from your experience than someone else's.
I think my response is leans into that some. One of the things I didn't say earlier with my children is one of the things, the results, what we ended up putting in place because of just some of the things we were seeing in our neighborhood or just whatever or even the world. I think it started because of something that happened nationally. But we have ethical conversations. And my daughter is 7. We sit down for dinner, let's have an ethical conversation. And the goal of doing that is in order to, one, help them to see the nuance of life, but when they leave out of my house, to be able to see a situation or a person and recognize the complexity of a person. And I think that is still offering peace in the world and is playing a different kind of role of being a peacemaker, because you're not necessarily seeing a person in the acts that they might be doing or the things they might be saying and automatically assuming them to be a bad person. You are stepping in it from a different angle and a different perspective, and that still offers some sort of a peace within the world, because it creates a mindset that has a potential to shift an entire generation of how we approach and how we live one another, right, and how we see each other, which still establishes a peace within the world.
What y'all are, I think, sparking me to think is that peace is not always quiet.
That's right.
Yeah.
We talk about peace and quiet, but the reality is, especially for Gen Z and Gen Alpha, rarely is their version of peace quiet. Like it requires that type of action. It requires that voice. It requires seeing peace from a multicultural perspective. And the more that we can be wind in their sails and fuel to their flame of working towards peace in the world as youth ministry leaders, gosh, how much better will this world be in the future? Y'all, thank you so much for sharing on these topics. I'm really excited for everybody to get to be a part of these series. If you're not an XP3 subscriber, we would love for you to try XP3 for free. You can go to tryxp3free.com, and you won't get these series, but you'll get a glimpse of some really good series to kind of give you a little taste of what exists in XP3. And then, I don't know, maybe you'll get these series someday down the road if we partner together. But no matter what, we hope that this conversation was helpful as you're rethinking youth ministry, and we would love to hear more about how you're rethinking youth ministry. You can DM us at Orange Students Online, and we would love to begin that conversation. Well, until next time, thanks for listening to the Rethinking Youth Ministry Podcast.